hasn't expressed an interest to develop the property?
No, the reason for the application was a landscape plan.
Okay. And are the trees a native species?
No, they are not a native species.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have a question? If nobody else does, I have one quick question. You did mention no landscape plan was submitted?
There was a description of the landscape plan, but not a detailed landscape plan. There was also no alternative landscape plan submitted showing whether or not it would be possible to incorporate the tulip poplar trees into the landscape plan.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? All right. We will now hear from the applicant. Is the applicant here?
I am here.
Okay. Just a minute. I think Evan's going to tell you time-wise.
I'm good. Yeah, you have 20 minutes and you can't see my clock. So I will just give you an oral interruption about 1 minute prior.
All right. All right. My name is Marilyn Wilsonstein. I work for LS and Associates. We were hired by Red Dog Investments, LLC, to do a remodel on the building that they purchased a couple years ago. And as part of this process, I got involved in this tree removal process. I'm a project manager. Tree removal is not my forte. I'm just going to say it right now. However, when we put the application together, we had met with our landscape designer, and the landscape designer, when he went into the backyard, he said there is absolutely nothing that we can do with the property with the way that the trees are in terms of doing any landscape plan, because the root system is significant and large and encompasses a large part of the back property. His intended use for this property is he has created small office spaces, and his intention is to have a place that is aesthetically pleasing, a nice backyard for the tenants of the building to utilize and increase the value of his rentals for the purpose of renting out the space. We did sort of include a plan, and it was a plan that originally showed the trees in it. However, and it included a patio. And is there a way to put that up on the screen, that original plan that I submitted? Or can I share my screen for that? Is that possible? Okay. Let me go ahead and pull that up. Sorry.
Jessica, can you put that up for her? Yeah, I mean, it might be easier.
I think it might be easier. So
well, go ahead and why don't you go ahead and keep making your presentation.
Okay. She while she's doing that, this application, after we put up the tree removal notice on the property, it became very apparent from talking to the neighbors of the East End Commons condominium that this was just not a landscaping issue for us. It is a property damage issue for the East End Commons condominium, and at which I understand they'll be speaking tonight. While we were making improvements to the property, to the interior of the property, the sewer backed up, and we brought in a plumber. They scoped the line. The line runs directly underneath those trees, and at about 20 feet out from the building, 40 feet out from the building, and 60 feet out from the building. And the trees are about 30 feet out from the building, the sewer line is impacted. The cost of repair was $7,500. The line has been cleaned and has been lined. It's not a permanent solution. Trees are attracted to water, and eventually the roots will puncture again that membrane. With regards to the criteria of the tree removal is proposed for removal because it has outgrown its landscape area, and or the removal is part of the landscape plan. If you look at the overhead view that Jessica had provided of the property, the trees, the canopy takes over the back half of that lot, and encroaches upon the southern property as well, the East End Commons condominium. And it is my understanding from talking with them that there has been, there are roots that are in their crawl space. These trees drop little seedlings that get in the air conditioner units. These trees, they're so large that according to research that we have done, the limbs get brittle at the top. The older they get, they are one of the species of trees that as it grows, the limbs become brittle, and therefore they're low wind resistance. And because they're so tall, there are no other trees that break that, that stop the wind from coming in and breaking off limbs during a heavy storm. As a matter of fact, the windstorm that we had in September caused multiple limbs to fall, one landing on the power line in the backyard of this property. And then multiple limbs landing on the condominiums next door. They're also not recommended, according to the University of Louisiana, they're not recommended for near driveways, near streets, near homes, because they do have a tendency to be less flexible with age, making the limbs and branches more brittle. The older trees lack the flexibility to bend. Since also, this is kind of opened a can of worms, and since the application, the property owner has started entertaining some development options in the back of the property. There's currently a garage in the southwest corner of the property, and he would like to do an addition to that. The one tree that is the most westerly is 7.5 feet from the corner of the garage. I did submit, and I don't know if you all got that today, but I did submit some comments and some photos of what's happening near the garage. Did you all see that?
While they're looking at it, this is Evan Boone, Deputy City Attorney. I'm just going to interrupt. The scope of the notice went out that said the proposal was for removal due to outgrown the landscape area. And if you're proposing to sort of expand the application to be a development base, we'd have to renotice and really in order to give people an opportunity to address that.
Right. So that I just wanted to bring that to your attention, because this has been sort of a kind of an ongoing thing. And, you know, maybe we were premature in bringing our tree removal permit at the time, but at the time The property owner was just looking at doing landscape.
Right.
This particular,
So if you want to do the landscape argument, fine. And then
yes,
depending on the results of that, if you want to do a development application later,
sure.
if you don't prevail on this,
Okay, that's fine. Thank
that'd
you.
be my
And
suggestion.
I understand that. Thank you.
Okay.
The property owner also owns the property to the north, the 520B, which just sits adjacent to this property. So basically it takes the whole corner of Fifth and B. There is a house currently sitting on that property that the property owner's son lives in. He also, one thing we're trying to do with the landscaping is be able to put in a fenced yard with grass. The son has some disabilities, and this is for his dog that helps him with his disabilities. And so part of that landscape plan, and Jessica, did you find that?
I don't have access to our data repository because I'm not on the virtual private network at this time.
Okay, so
Kat?
let me just pull it up real quick. And
Kat, can you put that up? Kat?
I have it, and I can put it up. Let's see, sorry, I just need to find it. Here it is. All right. Let me get to the drawing and all right. Let me get back here and I will share my screen. All right. Okay, can you all see that?
Yes. And just to
Okay.
confirm, that's in the record. Is that right?
Yes, it was part of the application. So what we had proposed originally.
Just a second. I did
Yeah.
not see this exact drawing. I saw something similar. And I'm looking at it right now. It was submitted as part of your email, looks like on August
Yeah.
12th.
Yeah.
I did see this.
You did? Okay.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So the property owner has, done a lot of exterior improvements, repaved the parking lot. He wants to upgrade this property, likes the old house, using it for individual office spaces. Our proposal was to have a paver patio off the back of the corner of the house. When we met with the landscape designer, he told us even having this patio here, he goes, I can't set this paver patio because the two trees, the black X's, the root system is so large, we can't even put in a paver patio. I noticed that one of the comments from one of the citizens who wanted to have the application denied said to put in a deck. To put in a deck in a situation where there's very little sunlight trickling through to the floor, and having all the leaves and the potential, we get a lot of rain here. There's a hazard liability of slippage on a deck, and that wasn't something that the property owner was interested in pursuing. He felt it would be more of a liability to him than anything else. We wanted to put a walkway from the door to we call it the storage room, to the entrance, to the side entrance over here. And the root system is so close to this that it's cracked the concrete. It's a tripping hazard now. There's nothing we can do. You can't prune tree roots that are this close to this building. And then to put a walkway across here, even if it's gravel walkway, we'd have to build up so much gravel because the tree roots are so large. We can't plant anything underneath there because we can't get in between the roots. So there's no real beautification of this. The other issue with these trees, and this is an issue a lot of people have with their trees, or with trees in general, fir trees drip sap. If these become infested with aphids, they drip a honeydew. It's called a aphid secretion, and it's a honeydew-like substance that's very sticky. I know the property owners to the south, they cannot sit on their patio when this is happening, and they have no control over if these trees are treated or not. But that's up to them to discuss. So we really have looked at options. The trees are just so large and encompass so much. Their root system encompasses so much of this yard. There's really not much that can be done with this. And like I said, the tree removal was originally submitted so that the property owner could make improvements to the backyard of the property. That for years has been very unattractive and filled with contractors' materials. 2 contractors used to rent this house. So as an effort to add value for the potential leasing of the building and providing space that would be appealing to tenants and not look like a yard with 2 overgrown trees that you can't plant anything underneath, we are asking that the tree removal be approved. Granted, the trees are significant. We do recognize that. But at some point, as a society, we feel like we have to draw the line between tree canopy and the tree danger to life and property, and being able to sit out in a yard and enjoying nature. The original submittal has now grown as a concern for our neighbors' safety and property damage. Like I said, during the last windstorm in September, a significant branch fell, landing on the power line. We had to call PGE to come out to remove it. The property owner has nothing against tall, beautiful trees. If these trees were in George Rogers Park, they would be a real beauty, but crammed on a postage stamp lot, not allowing plants to grow under them, roots creating tripping hazards, or being able to utilize the space to add value for creating a beautiful space for people to enjoy and sitting is wrong, in our opinion. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions of the applicant?
I do. I guess I want to ask Evan, are we allowed to bring up I was wanting to see a G106. Are we allowed to ask to bring that up?
Sure. Yeah.
Who can bring that up?
Kat? Kat, do you hear me?
I'm having trouble opening PDFs on this laptop, so let me try real quick.
While she's doing that, okay, I can relate to one of your things. I'm not sure this was approached the right way from a landscape standpoint, but I was in a house that had a tree that grew into the pipes, destroyed the pipes, have the plumber come out, rotor it, go through, and if you didn't do it regularly, then everything backs up in the house again, and you had to do it maintenance on a regular basis, or it caused a lot of problems. So I can relate to that experience. I've been there. As far as the landscaping, I'm not sure there's a good case there. I don't know if it was
What
approached
this,
properly.
we don't need to, this wouldn't be appropriate to deliberate at this
Okay.
point. You can ask
Okay.
questions.
Okay, so I'm looking for
I'm going
that.
to bring up G106. I think I can
Yep.
do it. Let's see. Let me bring it up PDF. Yep. Okay. PDF.
This is,
Okay,
There's
so if we
G106.
scroll down, there's a picture in there. Keep going. Next one, I guess. Right there. So I did recall, so those are the roots going over the path, and it looks like maybe they've been cut. Is that correct?
I do not know if I do not believe they have been cut. Looks like they're in the lower left corner. There's a root that probably was cut. But if you look closer to the building, the roots are causing the concrete to buckle, to come up.
Because I thought I read in the city report or somewhere that the root system was below the ground, and when I saw this picture, that doesn't look like roots below the ground. They look like they're popping up, and so I just wanted to bring that up. And
They actually sit about 2 feet above the ground in some places, so they are a significant, and that is one point I did not bring up in my presentation. They do sit substantially above the ground.
okay, all right, that's all I have.
Can I add one more thing that I forgot to mention? It's on that document.
Sorry.
It's on that yeah, it's the next photo after that document.
Okay, just a minute. Let's see, screen share. Where is it? You can't. Why is it not? Screen share. Oh, and it's click back on Zoom and it's not bringing up the share screen.
I can bring it up. I have it on my.
Okay, all right.
I actually put it together, so I can bring this up real quickly. Thank you for allowing me to mention this one last thing. All right, so I did bring an arborist out, and he did take a look at the trees. And if you notice, I don't know if you can see it there, this line that comes down the middle of the tree is called included bark. And it appears that the codominant trunks have grown together. And when you have a V like this on a tree with included bark, it creates a weak point, and this tree could literally split open if the conditions were right. And these are significant trunks that would hit the property to the north and the property to the south. If you have a joint that is that's a U shape, it has a little bit more strength in it, according to the arborist. That is the other reason why we feel that, and both trees, this is about 10 feet off the ground, and then the other tree has included bark that's about 20 feet off the ground with two significant trunks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I'll ask just a question in regards to all that. The responses that are in the report are coming from you. Do we have the actual arborist comments stating that and what they're, I mean, I appreciate, and I'm not questioning you, Marion, I just, for us to see it, I'd like to see, do you have an arborist report? Do you also have a report from the plumbers, and the issues there that we can actually, again, burden of proof.
Yes,
So we can make sure we have that.
I believe the plumber's information, Jessica, if I'm not forgetting, I believe I had forwarded that to you this summer. I have a video. I also have the plumber's information. As for the arborist, we did meet at the property last week. He is somebody who does a lot of work here in Lake Oswego and didn't want to be part of the hearing. So if I was to do this again, I would actually have a different arborist come that doesn't do a lot of work here and give me a report for you.
Okay.
No further questions from me.
Jessica, do you have the plumber's report?
We never received a report from the plumber. I did receive an email summarizing the report that can be viewed in the application document. I'm not sure off the top of my head what page it is.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that was my point of making sure that we actually had the report and not just the summaries.
I think the only thing that I think you're right, it was my summary, and I have the video that shows exactly with him talking at which point the tree roots showed up.
Okay, but we don't have that, so.
No.
Anybody else with questions? Kirk? Randy? Did I miss anybody? Mark? No questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Chair, I just wanted to follow up on a point I think the staff made. So to the applicant, I gather, did you do an assessment of whether root pruning was appropriate and rule that out?
So in speaking with the arborist, because of the location of the roots and the size of the trees, the root pruning, it would be the main roots that would need to get pruned. And he said that is not necessarily an option that he would recommend doing.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that Ms. Wilsonstein's summary of the plumbing report is Exhibit F4.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no other questions, if I'm correct, we will now move on to the public testimony, and we will go for those who are in support of the application first, correct, Evan?
Correct.
Okay, so I'm going to call your names, or Kat. I don't know exactly how we should do this. Do you want to let the people that we have noticed that are in favor of it, let them on if they're not on? Kat?
Yes.
Okay.
I will let them on.
Okay. And let us know who you're letting on.
Right now, Christina.
And she is
Christine. Turn your volume down. Christine Kelcher.
Just shut that off.
Christine, you there?
Is that feedback, is that echo because she has
Yeah.
YouTube
Okay,
channel
how's
on?
this?
Okay.
Is this better?
Yes.
Can you just shut that off? Just shut it off. Use that one.
Done. Hello.
You're on.
Okay, so you just have my audio, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I am Christine Kelcher and I live at 466 5th Street. And I'm trying to turn off the echo. Go to another room. Okay, so I do support removing the two tulip trees at 485th Street.
We lost you.
Okay.
Kat, you want to go to somebody else and see if we can straighten out Christine?
Yeah, this says, hello?
Yeah, who's this?
Okay, I might be under my husband, Don Kelscher. This is Christine. I
Okay.
might be on my husband's device. Our devices competed apparently, but shall Christine go ahead?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So I do support removing the trees because they're a hazard. I live at 466 5th Street, right under the tree. And even though I love trees and I think the flowers and foliage of those trees are beautiful, I accept the fact that these exotic, fast-growing trees have matured past their limit of sustainability and they become dangerous. This species is recommended for a space much larger and away from buildings. The branches tower almost 100 feet over and 20 feet across my bedroom. Fallen branches damage our roof and chimneys and have caused the need to repair the chimney and ceilings and replace the roof before it was needed to be replaced. These trees are known to have weak limbs and branches, and when they fall from the height that they reach lethal velocity, and we are wary to be outdoors under the trees from the falling branches. Even if severe pruning takes place to the trees, to make them a manageable 25 feet of height and maybe a 25-foot spread so that it wouldn't hang over my house, the roots can't be managed by trimming. The already massive and shallow roots have protruded more than 30 feet into our crawl space under my house, which affects accessibility to the crawl space. And if it's allowed to continue to grow, the roots threaten to damage our gas and water pipelines and heating ductwork, the infrastructure under our house. So besides safety factors, there's university-based literature regarding tulip trees that notes many other negative features, which I hope you have read in my written submission. And I also included personal photos. And I'd like to ask you, I don't know if you have any questions about what I've just said or about what I've written, but I'd like you to ask them if you have questions. And I want to thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Christine, commissioners? Okay. Thank you. Kat, before we get to the next person in favor, I just wanted to say we have Jill Shin, Justin McCormick, Linda Bruder, and Diane. Sorry, I don't know how to, Swiguth. I don't know how to say your last name. You did not note whether you are for or against the application. So if you could tell Kat, we get you in the right category. All right, Kat, can you give us the next person in favor?
Next up is Dawn Kulscher.
Okay.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. I'm Don Kelscher. I live in our condo at 466 5th Street. It's 15 feet due south of and under the canopy of those tulip trees on 485th Street. Thank you for listening to us and for being concerned with the environment of Lake Oswego. I would, though, like you to allow the tulip trees at 485th Street to be removed because they are a hazard to our adjoining property and have less benefit to the city's environment than others may suggest. The trees no longer have the space they need at the size they are. Trimming and pruning to match the trees to their space will reduce their height, the canopy, significantly. Their majesty would shrink accordingly. And while we agree with the concerns for reducing CO2, I do not believe that a couple of trees here and there are the answer. Other massive worldwide programs are necessary to reduce the impact of climate change. If we look at the net total life cycle CO2 reduction of these trees going forward, it's not as much as one would think, because the leaves and debris that fall from these trees land mostly on pavement and roofs. They actually add to the CO2 problem. Microbes in rich topsoil provide decay with no CO2 release, but these trees do not have that benefit. Instead, the debris rots on sterile surfaces or is disposed of using lots of CO2 producing hauling, leaf blowing, etc. An additional negative impact in the net CO2 reduction is the accelerated construction related to building repairs needed because of the trees' impact on our buildings. For example, the re-roofing of the northern 4 units of the East End Commons was forced in 2017, 6 years before it should have been, because roof leakage caused by leaf dams. And in Wisconsin, we call them ice dams, but they're leaf dams here. They pile up. If it was just leaves, they'd wash off. But this tree drops so many sticks and rugged branches that they create a debris jam for those leaves to pile up. I come out every month and reach out on the roof and drag that stuff off the gutters so that it doesn't back up and cause a dam problem like it did a few years ago. The stuff that drops from in addition, the shallow roots of these trees may eventually, as my wife said, cause foundation heaving throughout the adjoining units here. And that would involve a lot of CO2 production. Concrete is the biggest CO2 producer in the world almost. It would be concrete, drywall, labor, machinery, etc. So supporters of denying this permit will tell you that these trees are great because they reduce the CO2, but there's a lot of better ways to reduce CO2 in the atmosphere. The trees are too big. They probably grew that way because there were more of a residential area here 40 years ago. In 1998, these condos were built. They sheared a bunch of the original roots for those trees that spread out in the room they needed. Those roots are reinstating now under our foundations. I've been crawling in my basement, in my crawl space, bundling with those roots. Tina sent a picture of it, I think. One of the roots, I didn't get to many others, but in different times, they're all over the place down there. And they're growing. As the roots grow near that garage, they're going to grow under our foundations. Foundations are only 3 feet deep. If we had an 8-foot, 10-foot deep basement, they wouldn't be such an impact. But they're there, and they're going to look for whatever moisture from just humidity that they can get. Thank you. Let these trees go down.
Thank you. Any questions for Don? Okay, Kat, the next person in favor.
We have Craig Chisholm.
Okay, welcome, Craig.
Yes, thank you. For my background, I'm an attorney. I retired, long retired. I was trained as a master woodland manager by OSU, their extension program, although I'm not speaking on their behalf. I'm only speaking myself. I have a background in science from Yale. I hold a fair amount of timberland myself, and I've a lot of experience with trees anyhow. When I was a member of the Lake Oswego Tree Code Revision Committee, which Jessica may recall, I observed a site in Portland where a school teacher was crushed to death by a falling tree. The scene's etched in my mind, not only because of the great damage, but because it was needless harm. The likelihood of that particular tree falling after you looked at it was apparent to a knowledgeable observer, maybe not a casual observer. So I do have a strong bias against trees that kill people. I have also a very strong bias, as Jessica knows, for planting trees and growing trees. That's the other factor. So those are my biases. I'll put them on the table. As to those trees, both those trees are massive trees. It's plain to see that when they fall, as all branches and trees must fall in the course of nature, the force of their fall will also be massive. I live across the alley from those trees, and we have a fine view of these magnificent trees. I really like them. I walk by them regularly with my dog, and I often talk to the nice ladies who live in the little condominium south of them. Now, someone had raised the issue of a codominant stem, and they raised some aspects of it, and that's absolutely true. I've seen it repeatedly in many contexts where that is a place where the branches of trees go, and in forestry you get rid of those things in your management process very early on for that obvious reason, among other things. But I took a closer examination, because once I knew about this application and looked at them, and if I don't want to overgo my time, but the technical aspects of it, on the west side of the west one, you could see sort of a line of some sort. And so then I thought, well, I wonder if they're close enough to be codominant, but I wonder if there really is codominant bark. And codominant bark is the bark trapped between two trees, two stems. And the significance of that is that bark has no structural strength, or very little structural strength. Unless you have sound wood there, you're moving the leverage point that would move the leverage point up the tree. You're tying the leverage point to the very bottom of the two stems. So anyhow, I looked at the west side, and then I thought, well, I wonder if. And then I walked around to the other side, and you can see a very good example of a groove going down the far side of the tree. And remarkably, that ridge is a double ridge. That's quite unusual. And that, I am not sure of it. It would have to be invasively checked out, but that may be a sign of the included bark in that area. There are all sorts of other issues, and I don't want to take your time up to talk about them. And one other thing on the bark there that probably no one noticed is there's a circular piece on the south side of bark that may indicate an included branch in the tree, which is right at the point where it also might break. There are all sorts of issues. You know, there's issues of fire, there's issues of wind, there's issues of disease, there's issues of the logical thing to take this thing down is an ice storm, which you don't know about ahead of time where it's going to come to. But I'm supposed to talk about the criteria, and Evan, who I've dealt with before, would probably call me to task if I didn't talk about the criteria. So I'll do that.
30 seconds.
Well, the language of the code is absurd in the legal sense that no reasonable person can support it. It does not talk about safety for people. This section does not. Another section does not talk about safety for people. Can you tell me that any reasonable person would put property, but it does talk about, ahead of the safety of people? That is absurd. That's right out of the canons of
time. You can, Mr. Chisholm, you can finish your sentence there. I think it's up to the chair, but your 5 minutes.
What I'm saying is, you have a statute here, 55 or clause 5502.080, that does not include anything about safety. That is, in a very secondhand fashion, included in the emergency tree portion of the code itself. But this misses the most important thing. It's obvious to you looking at it, it's missing safety. Doesn't have it. Now that is absurd in the legal sense, because no reasonable person can say that that's what the statute means. You have to construe the statute. Now, maybe you can, or construe the law. You might construe the law by saying, well, it's implied in it. It's a shorthand way to say property damage, but it's really looking also at people. Those stakes are the heavy stakes here.
Okay, I appreciate it. Your time is up, and we appreciate your testimony. Okay, Kat, anybody else in favor?
Yes, for sure.
Pardon me?
Yes, we have Patty up next.
Oh, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Hi, I'm Patty Arndt. I live at 468 Fifth Street. I'm HOA president for East End Commons condominiums. And I'd like to kind of continue on the safety factor, because I live right under these trees. In fact, the condominiums are actually more affected by the trees and the branches than the house on the property until the actual tree itself falls. I will tell you, I'm a native of South Dakota, and I know what wind is. And believe me, when we have winds here at least 40 miles an hour, I do not sleep in my upstairs bedroom because I am so close to these gigantic branches. The branches are actually bigger than a lot of trees. The branches, 1.5 feet horizontally above my bedroom. I sleep downstairs on the sofa because I feel so unsafe. The last windstorm in September, I actually went to bed upstairs, but all the branches falling and hitting the roof were just booming away. And so I moved downstairs. I also was here in Portland for the 1979 ice storm. I don't know if you remember it, but it killed 7 people. And it wasn't so much, well, it was falling trees, but these horizontal trees that hold that ice, up to hundreds of pounds of ice, that's when they give way, and that's when they're going to come down. So, so as much as I also love trees, I think they're magnificent. These trees do not belong where they are. They belong in a big field, probably on the East Coast, the Midwest. They are not native to the Northwest, so I think there's a reason. The aesthetics are something else, because I don't mind raking leaves. I do have trouble with my air conditioner with millions of little seeds from these trees in my air conditioning unit. There's no way to keep them off. We also have paid so much for roof first damage, leaks, and then finally replacing the roof, all because of these trees. I mean, so the edification that some people get viewing these trees from a distance, I just don't think is worth the safety of the people who actually live near the trees. And the last thing I'd like to say about safety is, who, if you could, any of you could answer, who is liable for the damage, both to property or life and limb, when these trees do come down on people? Is anybody, any of you liable? What happens when we've made this application, or our neighbors made the application, it's denied, and then something happens after we've warned you? Anybody? No? Who's liable? Anybody? No?
This is not the place to give legal advice.
Okay. All right. Well, I just wondered if anybody knew, so I guess you don't. But I remember when we saw that big yellow sign go up that there was an application to remove these trees, we all just cheered. And if any of you had these trees in your yard, you would be clamoring to have them removed, believe me. But like I said, they're magnificent, just not for the space that they occupy right now. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Patty? Okay, thank you. Kat, who's next?
Diana Schwartz.
Yeah, Kat, that's okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, are you in
Okay,
favor?
I'm Diane Swyskuth. Yeah. Okay. Again, I'm one of the unit owners of the East End Commons condominiums, and I live at 462 Fifth Street. I'm at the far end of the condos here. But what I like to do is just take you through what we've been going through. Imagine sitting outside on your patio on a nice evening when suddenly you see and feel what you think are raindrops, but instead are aphid excrement droppings, known as honeydew, coming down on your head from the trees next door. Imagine sleeping in the front guest bedroom rather than your own on a windy, stormy night due to the fear that the massive branches from the trees next door will come crashing through your roof or window and into your back bedroom. Imagine seeing roots from the trees next door invading your home's crawl space and seeds from the trees dropping into and damaging your air conditioning unit. Imagine seeing large tree branches and limbs from the trees next door falling on your roof, causing damage to your home's roof pipes and gutters, covering the ground and alleyway, and hanging on electrical wires. These incidents are not imaginary, they are real. They are a few examples of the life our unit owners have had and are having while living next door to the tulip trees at 485th Street. Our homes and property are being affected by these tulip trees. Our quality of life and health are being affected by these tulip trees. Our concerns, those of property, personal safety, liability, environment, and health, and those of a neighbor are noted in the written comments G100, G101, G102, and G103, but they have not been addressed in the application denial. So we're asking you to consider them now because they are real. According to the November 6th staff report, page 3 of 11, staff, quote, staff finds that the scope of the application did not include damage to abutting property, and even if it did, there is insufficient evidence in the record to demonstrate that damage to neighboring property cannot be remedied through pruning and maintenance. What evidence is needed to demonstrate likely damage as per the code? Damage from these trees to our property, the abutting property, has occurred in the past and is likely to, or quote, will continue to occur in the future based on the nature of these trees. Some facts about tulip trees. Their pests include aphids, along with their associated sticky honeydew and black sooty mold, which may require harmful chemicals to control them. They grow too tall and large for most urban landscapes, making them unsuited for many sites. They are more prone to wind, ice, and storm damage than other trees due to their height. They rank among the lowest in wind resistance, so the danger of falling limbs and branches is a concern when planting them near driveways, homes, or streets. They become less flexible as they age, making their limbs and branches more brittle. Older trees that lack the flexibility to bend with the wind may pose a greater risk of limb breakage. The tulip trees, as noted in section 3A of the tree code, are, quote, likely to or will continue to cause damage to a permanent, viable existing structure, our homes, or to infrastructure such as utilities, our crawl spaces, and the water, sewer, and utility pipes they contain, or paved landscape features, our patios, that cannot be remedied through reasonable tree maintenance or pruning.
1 minute.
The trees on the property at 485th are older trees and therefore less flexible and at a greater risk of limb breakage and resulting damage. These trees are likely to or will continue to cause damage. The tulip trees are not suited for a populated area such as the property on which they stand. Does not the likely or continued damage to people and property posed by these trees outweigh which box is or is not checked on the application? Does not the likely or continued damage to people and property posed on these trees outweigh the aesthetics of the neighborhood? The applicant's plan will have a fresh and positive impact on the aesthetics of the neighborhood and will prevent likely damage to people and property in the neighborhood. We all love trees and we know the benefits of trees, but these tulip trees are not
Time.
suitable for the property on which they stand, and they never have been. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Any questions, commissioners? Okay. Kat, who's next?
Next, we have Linda Brumder.
Linda.
Hi, I'm Linda Brumder. I live at 464 Southwest 5th Street. I'm one of the condominium owners. And I would just like to say that I agree with every one of my neighbors who have commented on the danger of these trees. The trees are beautiful. There's no question about that. But they belong out in a large field. They don't belong on a postage stamp sized lot. And again, the roots causing damage into our crawl spaces, the branches falling, causing damage on our roofs, the leaves clogging up our gutters. And I have no doubts that the people who propose this tree removal will create a beautiful space. You know, they're not going to just pave it. They're going to plant things, and they're going to plant other trees that will grow, but they will plant trees that will be appropriate to the lot size. That's all I have to say. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Linda. Questions? No? Kat, our next participant.
Next, we have Jeannie.
I beg your pardon?
Hi, this is Jeannie McCulloch, and hi Jeff, how are you?
Good, how are you, Jeannie?
Fine, thanks. I live across the street from the site. I live at 535B Avenue, and I agree with the people that have spoken about the majesty of those trees. They're absolutely beautiful. I see them from my bedroom and my office, and I look at them every day. I think it would be a loss to the neighborhood if we take those down. I have some empathy for the people in the East End condominiums, but I want to remind the board that this was an application about landscaping. And I think it would be a loss for the community to see another set of beautiful trees removed when so many trees have been removed from First Edition by developers in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. Any questions for Jeannie? Okay, Kat. Who do we have next?
Next, we have Jill.
Okay, Jill.
Hi, I'm Jill Shin. I live over on Cumberland Road, and I do really feel empathy for people who are fearful of these trees. But again, this was for a landscape proposal, and plans weren't provided. No alternatives were explored. None of that was discussed, and I think all of the fear and the leaves in people's gutters and the roots in people's sewers could be cared for with routine maintenance. That's the choice we make when living amongst the trees is, yeah, you have to clean your gutters once a month, and you have to take care of your sewer. And that's just a responsibility as a homeowner. And I don't think the trees should bear the brunt of irresponsible home ownership, nor should the people next door. So I really think it is on the landowner to call an arborist and take care of the trees, and the trees shouldn't be cut down just because they haven't been taken care of.
Thank you, Jill. Any questions for Jill? No? Okay, Kat, who's next?
I do not have anyone else online signed up to testify.
Okay, Evan, do we have to wait, do the delay, or do we move on to the next portion of the application process?
The applicant would have an opportunity for rebuttal because there were 3 people who testified in opposition, and then you would move to deliberation. There's no extension continuance.
Okay,
right?
Thank you. Mary Ann?
Okay, thank you very much. Even though they are correct, this was a landscape use proposal, and we did provide with our application a landscape proposal. It became very evident through the process that this was also a hazard proposal, hazard issue, in that there are significant issues to property, to the neighbors to the south. There are significant issues to the property, the 485th Street property. And the Jill is correct in that there is maintenance that needs to be done on trees. That is absolutely correct. But when a tree outgrows its space, it no longer is viable to maintain a healthy existence, and to be allowed to stay could cause harm to the neighbors surrounding it. That being said, there still is not, if the trees are allowed to stay, we cannot landscape the back in terms of having anything be able to grow and be able to utilize the space that that is the property owner's intent. I thought the neighbors brought up very good points about the structure, especially Craig Chisholm, about the structure of the tree, and if we have to proceed, if you all are going to deny this application, and if we have to proceed down this route, then that would be something that we would more than likely have to do, because it's apparent how dangerous the trees actually are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Evan, before we move to deliberations.
Right. Go ahead and move to deliberations. And I see there was a Linda Bruder submitted a comment.
Yeah, was I able to ask her a question?
Oh, yes, you can ask the applicant in rebuttal.
Yeah. Hi, Mary Ann.
Hi.
In the last 5 years, has there been any major pruning of the trees, especially over the neighbors' homes that they were worried about? Has there been any type of pruning?
I cannot address that myself. I don't know if one of the neighbors is able to address that issue, because I've only been involved in this property for the last couple of years, and I know since we've been there, there has not been any tree pruning. So I don't know if one of the homeowners can answer that question or not.
Well, the commission can only ask you questions on rebuttal.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, let's move to deliberations. Gentlemen, what are you thinking?
Well, since I asked one of the questions earlier, I can go ahead and start. I absolutely am not dismissing any of the comments, whether they're for or against. They all make valid points to both sides. However, you know, we've done a lot of these tree removals, and it comes down to the burden. And what I would like to see before I could make a real decision that would even be an attempt for an approval is I'd need to see the arborist plan on there and their results of everything that was said. The plumbing reports, not just the summaries. The damage reports that could come from an arborist, that can come from somebody specifically saying, here's what the damage could be, would be caused by somebody professional in that industry. And then also an actual landscape plan that says, here's exactly what we will be doing when those trees are gone, not saying we can't do anything if we don't remove the trees. So I'd like to see what's being replaced with what's going where, along with those other reports.
Thank you. Randy,
Thank you. I certainly concur in Commissioner Frankel's comments. It seemed to me there was insufficient evidence of consideration of reasonable alternatives. And the staff report, I believe, and the evidence talked about, or considerations talked about root pruning or an alternative plan to incorporate the existing trees into the landscape plan. I didn't see sufficient evidence that that had been done. I think testimony by several people, the comments were that these are beautiful trees. Certainly the community values them. So there seems to be tension between the community value of these trees viewed from afar and the property owner's rights and the rights of certainly people in the condominium. I didn't feel that there was evidence that this tree was planted on a postage-sized lot. It seemed like the condominiums were built near the tree. People bought their condominiums. Obviously, the tree was there. So, and it didn't seem to me that we were being asked to evaluate this application on the basis of it being a hazardous tree under the city's ordinances and rules relating to applications to remove a tree because it's hazardous, or a hazardous tree permit application. So those are things that came to my mind. And then there was some suggestion of future development, but that application isn't before us either. We're just having this landscape application. So I think I have to view it in those terms.
Thanks, Randy. Anybody else? Thoughts? Kirk, David, Mark? Jump in, you guys.
Yes. As presented as a landscaping issue, I had no doubts in my mind that there was not sufficient evidence to find other than the city department found. But it became quite a moving target or a moving goalpost. Then came in issues of safety and came in issues of property damage. And again, since we are charged this evening with voting on the merits of this case vis-a-vis a landscaping issue, I don't find it very difficult to make a decision. If there are significant issues raised by the owner of the property and or neighbors or all as a group, I don't know if that's possible, about safety issues, and that would require, I personally believe, a separate proceeding. Thank you.
The way I see it is it's a little frustrating for me because it's obvious that that the applicant was not coached in terms of the legal responsibilities we have as a commission to rule based upon just the criteria on which they applied for within the code. And so it's a little frustrating because had they been better coached, I think they may have come in with, you know, or spent the time and had an arborist, you know, write a report that can document the hazardous nature of the tree. And so, you know, as with many of our hearings, it's, you know, you know, we have to give the same speech. It says, you know, we as a commission are here to rule based upon the criteria that's in the code. And in this case, the criteria for removal are simply not met. And all the commissioners seem to agree with that. So it's kind of a, you know, I mean, frankly, it's kind of a waste of our time, even though I you know, I looked at the tree, and to me, it's obvious that it is too large for the little postage stamp lot that it's on. You know, it should just be obvious that that's, you know, it's just dominating everything there. But, you know, I can't use that as a criteria for a decision, you know, and I don't have the expertise to know whether or not it is a hazardous tree or not. And so I'm not going to, you know, just take the word on people that are promoting their application. I need somebody, an objective source from a professional. So that's why I'm going to vote in favor with the city's recommendation.
Kirk, you haven't said anything yet?
Well, because those commissioners who have gone before me said basically
everything that I would say, and I don't have anything profound to add to their analysis. Okay, Craig?
Yeah, the presentation was scattered. And there's some good cause on both sides. I understand that. But certainly, I think you'd need an arborist report that was more addressing whether the tree is outgrown the change in the neighborhood and the effects of the neighbors and the ability of correcting the problem through pruning, or that's beyond that. So I would tend to agree with what we've heard from the other commissioners.
Okay, very good. My opinion is basically what is stated in our city arborist's opinion in the last paragraph of their report, which basically says the application fails to satisfy the criteria for the issuance of a type 2 tree cutting permit, and the application should be denied unless further information is submitted. I think we all kind of have the same feelings about this one. So if anybody would like to make a motion, now would be the time.
Well, I would move. I would move to deny the application as enunciated by the city arborist.
Second. Thank you. So we'll take a vote. Kat, do you want to take the roll?
Shearer,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Berardi,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Silent,
Yes.
Arthur,
Yes.
7-0. I believe that's unanimous by the commission, and written fines will be brought to the commission at the next meeting on Monday, December 7 at 7 p.m.
Okay, thank you. I guess we'll move right on to the next public hearing, which is AP 20-08 TR 499-2003940, a request for approval of a type 2 tree application to remove 2 Douglas fir trees 26.5 inches and 44.5 inches in diameter at breast height due to damage to retaining wall and driveway. The site is located at 1660 Campus Way, 21E16BA01200. The staff coordinator is Jessica Morey Collins, Associate Planner. Evan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the procedure again. This tree removal hearing is to be considered based upon the applicable criteria and standards. The staff report lists the criteria that staff identified as applicable to the request. It was available online. You must identify any additional criteria you believe applies. Testimony and evidence must be directed towards that applicable criteria. Please specifically identify to the commission the criteria or standards you are addressing so the commission may consider your testimony in relation to the criteria or standards. If you do not identify the criteria or standards you are addressing, the commission is not obliged to guess which standards or criteria you're testifying about and may not consider your testimony in its decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the city council based on that issue. Public hearing process is as follows: a presentation by staff, then testimony by the applicant up to 20 minutes, then testimony by parties in support of the application, followed by testimony by parties opposed to the application, and finally testimony by those neither for nor against the application. Individuals will be allowed up to 5 minutes. Any person in attendance may cede his or her time for testimony to another person, but in no case shall any person's testimony be increased to greater than 10 minutes. Recognized neighborhood associations, government or government agencies, or other incorporated public interest organizations will be allowed up to 10 minutes. Following that will be the applicant's rebuttal up to 5 minutes, and then commission deliberation. including a statement to the commission, including a statement to the applicant by the commission of any proposed conditions of approval if the commission votes to approve, different than contained in the staff report, and the applicant's response to the commission's conditions of approval. These time limits do not include time spent responding to issue questions from the commission, testimony by attorneys, representatives, and witnesses on behalf of or which the part of the presentation by a person shall be counted within that person's time limit. It is assumed that persons are testifying on their own behalf unless they expressly identify the recognized neighborhood association, government or government agency, or other incorporated public interest organization they are representing. A potential conflict of interest declared on behalf of each of the DRC members to the extent of their business or employment, which each will identify. Unless declared otherwise, the respective DRC member does not have a known present or anticipated future business relationship with the project or the applicant. It is possible the future business relationship could arise in initiation, design, construction, or maintenance of the project through either the employment or design of the DRC member personally or through a relative as defined in ORS 244-020. And let me, a little bit out of order here. If you have not already contacted and you've arranged to appear virtually and you wish to do so, please either call Kat Kluge at 503-635-0286 or email her at kkluge@lakeoswego.city. Again, that's Kat Kluge at 503-635-0286 or email at kkluge@lakeoswego.city so that you may join the meeting. At this point, I would ask the commission members to please declare if you have any ex parte contacts, including a site visit, if you have any bias on the application, if you please declare your business or employment, and please state if you have any financial conflicts of interest. Mr. Shear, you'll declare it and take a poll.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Shear. I'm a retired contractor. I have no business interests, no ex parte contact. I have no bias, no financial bias either. David, would you declare?
Yes, my name is David Polson. I'm a civil engineer. I did have the chance to visit the site today. I've had no ex parte contact. I have no financial conflicts of interest, and I have no bias.
Thanks, David. Kirk?
My name is Kirk Smith. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Buckhalter Ader Wynn. I have not visited the site. I have no ex parte contacts, no biases, no additional financial conflicts of interest. I took the information that the city provided me with respect to the applicants and other parties and ran them through Buckhalter Ader Wynn's complex system and determined that our firm has no conflicts with the applicants or any parties associated with it.
Thank you, Kirk. Jason?
Jason Frankel, bank manager here, Key Bank here in downtown Lake Oswego. I have not done a site visit. No other ex parte contact has happened. No bias and no financial conflict of interest.
Thank you, Jason. Randy?
I'm trying to be good and put my mic on mute. I'm Randy Arthur. I'm a civil litigation attorney with the Portland firm of Bovenhauser Bailey. I did receive some names and run them through a conflicts check with our firm and found no conflicts by the firm or its clients with the applicants. I've not done a site visit. I've had no ex parte contacts. I have no disqualifying bias and no financial interest in the outcome of this application.
Thanks, Randy. Mark?
My name is Mark Silent. I'm a small business owner. I have no ex parte contacts. I have not made a site visit. I have no bias and I have no financial conflicts.
Thank you, Mark. Craig?
My name is Craig Berardi. I am a financial consultant. I've lived probably a quarter mile away, occasionally pass through there with my dog. My kids went to the school across the street. No ex parte contacts, no bias, no financial conflicts of interest.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
Before we go into the staff report, is the applicant here? Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Thank you, Jessica.
well, before that, is there any challenge to commissioners' right to consider the application? Hearing none, Jessica Maury Collins, Associate Planner with the staff for the staff report.
Thank you.
All right, looks like I was muted there. We can go ahead and start the slideshow. Good evening again, Commissioners. My name is Jessica Maury Collins, Associate Planner and Staff Coordinator for this application. This application is a request to remove 2 trees at 1660 Campus Way due to damage to an existing driveway and retaining wall and tree droppings. The trees are located at the front of the lot at 1660 Campus Way. The lot is currently occupied by a single-family residential dwelling. The site is zoned R7.5 low-density residential. The surrounding lots are developed with single-family residential dwellings. The site slopes slightly from 410 feet at the west corner to roughly 420 feet at the east corner. The site contains no watercourses. The trees are proposed for removal due to damage to an existing driveway. The city's contract arborist and planning staff observed a crack in the driveway, but could not substantiate that the crack is caused by tree roots. The applicant submitted photographs of exploratory excavation that show several small roots along the retaining wall. The roots are of a size that, in the opinion and experience of the city's contract arborist, could be pruned. The applicant bears the burden of proof to demonstrate that the damage to the driveway and retaining wall are caused by the subject trees, and further that this damage could not be remedied through reasonable pruning and maintenance. In this case, the driveway might be repaired with concrete patch or filler without necessitating removal of the significant tree. Similarly, the applicant has not submitted evidence to show that the roots are interfering with the natural gas line, nor that root pruning is not a viable option to mitigate risk to the natural gas line. Finally, normal shedding of cones, needles, and other debris from the tree are not typically considered in issuance of a Type 2 permit and do not relate to the criteria for a tree having outgrown its planting space. The trees are large, healthy, mature Douglas firs, and the larger of the 2 trees is found to be significant to the neighborhood character and aesthetics based on its size. The trees are prominently visible on Campus Way and Green Tree Road. Based on the significance of the larger tree, it may only be approved for removal if one of the exceptions of LOC 55.02.080 is met, as I will discuss. Because the larger tree is found to be significant, the applicant must demonstrate that an exception per LOC 55.02.080 has been met. That is, the tree must be found to cause damage to a permanent, viable structure that cannot be remedied through normal pruning and maintenance. The city's contract arborist and planning staff could not confirm that the cracks in the driveway were caused by the subject trees, or further that the cracks could not be remedied without tree removal. Likewise, planning staff could not confirm that the trees are interfering with the natural gas line, nor that root pruning would not be a viable option to prevent damage. Finally, the exception requires that the trees cause damage to an existing structure or infrastructure. Because a vehicle is neither, tree droppings causing damage to a vehicle does not suffice to satisfy the exception. Based on the criteria discussed herein, staff recommends denial of this application. This concludes my presentation, and I will now take questions.
Thank you, Jessica. Anybody have any questions for Jessica? Kirk?
Jessica, in the report, there's 2 trees that are being considered, one at 26.5 and the 44.5. And I think in your presentation, you talked about the significant tree being the 44.5, but I was a little confused by the report. Why couldn't the applicant get a permit for the 26? Because when I reviewed the arborist report, I think it said something about it having a broken crown, or it sounded like, little Jack Corner or something, had a broken crown or something. So,
yeah, so the smaller of the 2 trees was not found to be significant. However, it was not substantiated that the tree root was causing damage to the structure or to an existing structure. So we didn't have a ground for removal, if that makes sense.
So was the analysis bifurcated based on whether or not a tree was like the bigger one was significant and then the other tree wasn't significant. But I guess I was a little confused why, if the 26 isn't significant, why the homeowner wouldn't be able to get a permit for that tree.
Criterion, staff found that the first criterion was not met, that the removal is for landscaping or development purposes. And so the reason for removal was because it was damaging the rock wall in the driveway. And we cannot establish, or there has not been evidence presented in the record that either of those trees are causing damage to the driveway or the retaining wall. So the issue with the smaller tree is that it doesn't meet criterion 1. And you have to meet all the criterion in order to get, or criteria in order to get approval under a type 2. So while it meets other criteria, it doesn't meet criterion 1.
Okay. Other questions for the applicant? I mean, for Jessica?
Hi.
Craig.
Yeah, looking at that picture, that aggregate rock driveway looked like it was depressed. And maybe this isn't your area, Jessica, but if it was a root, would it be uprooting versus settlement? And maybe we'll hear more about that later. So I don't know if you're able to comment on that. And was there any bulging in that wall that showed signs of that the roots were pushing that wall out? I didn't see that from the pictures.
Yeah, I didn't observe any bulging in the wall, and I'm certainly not qualified to, discuss whether or not damage to an existing driveway is caused by one thing or another. But I will note that in her report, the city's contract arborist had noted that the type of damage observed in the driveway is typical of just normal wear and tear and age of this type of construction.
Okay, anybody else for Jessica? All right, it's time to hear from the applicant. Tom?
Find the unmute button. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for your time this evening. I know this is all irrelevant, but let me just quickly give you a little bit of my background. First of all, I have a love and deep appreciation for trees. I know they have many virtues, with carbon absorption chief among them in the fight against climate change. I also agree with the general stance in Lake Oswego that trees merit protections. Still, trees have a significant positive impact on livability, adding to the beauty of a neighborhood. For most people, the beneficial influence on their mental state just by seeing them and being around them. While I was a chair for the City of Forest Grove Planning Commission back in the 80s, I co-authored along with some of the other commissioners a letter to the editor about trees, and the entire commission approved it unanimously. It was then published, and we felt that it helped raise the public awareness and appreciation of trees. I believe in global warming, or climate change if you prefer. My wife and I participate in the carbon abatement options for both our electrical and gas services to the full extent that they offer. We've owned this, during the time we've owned this property, we've removed 3 large trees, 2 of those because they were right up next to the house, and the third was as a dead tree hazard. We also recently removed 2 type 1 trees. We're encroaching on the play structure, and we have for our grandson, and also shading our garden. We've also planted a dogwood and a couple of apple trees. We have a substantial number of trees on our lot. We're on a 12,000 square foot lot. Even after taking out the overlap of the trees and the overhang of 2 adjoining properties, we still have about 70% of our lot that is covered with trees. So before I go on, I want to suggest definitions that we could hopefully agree on for some of the articles that I've included in this. which is that woodland versus forest. There seems to be no particular good definition that is universal. And I find no comments about that in any of the city documentations that I've found. And some of the reading that I've done, did find one clarifying definition that at least a couple people put forward, which is that a woodland would be 30 to 80% of coverage, and that a forested area would be 80% or more. So I'm hoping that we can at least agree for the purposes of considering my case that we go by those definitions. If any of you are aware of a consensus definition that would be different, please let me know. I'll try to incorporate that into any discussion we have. Okay, so why are we here? My request to remove 2 of these type 2 trees has been denied, even though I have provided what I consider to be substantial evidence in 3 key areas, which would be more than enough to meet the criteria for approval. And in my opinion, if proper consideration is given to the evidence in any one of the 3, the city should be obligated to approve my request. I acknowledge it for one of those areas, my eye condition. It is not a topic that is specifically addressed in the city's ordinance. But in my opinion, to be compliant with our state constitution, the statute should provide for how a request like that should be handled. And in the absence of it, some reason should be applied to the situation and treated accordingly. City staff has failed to properly consider and report their findings on all of the relevant issues and concerns that I have submitted. And the city planning department manager literally laughed at my assertion and concerns about my eye condition. As far as I can tell, staff has also left the letter from my eye doctor out of what they put together for this hearing and have not provided it to you, even though I specifically asked them to do so when they called to ask me about whether or not they should include it. Sorry, lost my spot here. Sorry, a little technical difficulties. It's skipping more than what it should when I go to scroll down here. Okay, so I have an eye condition that is called allergic conjunctivitis, and then typically once it flares up, it escalates into scleritis. I have a letter from my eye doctor affirming that condition, and because of the allergy trigger that it's related to, she agrees that taking these 2 trees out may very well help my condition. I understand that I would probably be able to petition to have all of the trees of this type taken off my property, but I don't want to do that. I'm trying to just take out the 2 that are in the position where I go in and out of my house all the time, and where I'm exposed the most frequently. And hopefully that will reduce the level of allergens to the point that I don't have those kind of flare-ups. And then also, just for the record, that the scleritis can cause a variety of significant eye problems. The most significant, of course, would be permanent blindness. That is really, in fact, one of the public comments that was a little bit insightful, although I'm not sure they meant it in an insightful way. They said that, well, these cracks appear to have been there for a while. Something must have changed. But yes, something has changed. Since 2015, I've had these eye flare-ups at least once every year. And we're concerned that the treatment for it will not get it under control in time, and I wind up blind in whichever eye it happens to be inflamed in. And so far, I've had it in both eyes. Fortunately, only one eye at a time. But that's really the driving factor for why this has a sense of urgency with me. And if you hear some emotion in my voice, that's where it comes from. Okay, so if on that one, I suppose. All right. Let me just quickly, to make sure I don't run out of time before I get back to this. So I know that you primarily want to deal with the code, and the staff has misstated for you tonight the actual language in the code and what I believe it says. When they talk about what's in the code, and let me find that exact language here. There we go. So in municipal code 55.02.080, section 3, exceptions A. I'll just read the code to you verbatim. Listing the exceptions. A tree is likely to or will continue to cause damage to a permanent, viable existing structure or to infrastructure such as utilities or paved landscape features and cannot be remedied through reasonable tree maintenance or pruning. City staff seems to be singularly focused on this notion that I have to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that it has caused damage to the property in order to meet this criteria. That's simply not what this statute says. There's two parts to it. There's one part of that sentence that deals with existing damage, where it says will continue to cause damage. And the other part of it has to deal with potential future damage. And the level of burden of proof to me on that one is that I just need to prove that the tree is likely to cause damage in the future. Now, I've provided pictures of roots of the nature of Douglas fir trees, a couple different examples of trees that have been uprooted and pictures taken that show the root structure that would typically be underground. I have provided pictures that use chalk line to outline the drip line of the trees, where it's clear that the roots of those trees, which typically go out to about the drip line, and I've also in the other pictures of the root structure, I have modified them with lines to indicate the number of times the root or the trunk width to demonstrate the width of the roots. And if you take the trunk width in both of those examples, the roots extend out at least 4 times the width of the trunk. And in my case, the trunk width is almost 45 inches. So you're talking about at least 15 feet of root extension from the trunk of the tree, just from that aspect. Then, but generally the guidance that, you know, arborists or whoever would be able to explain is that the roots should be considered to go out to the drip line of the tree, the more significant roots. Of course, you have the little smaller, little suckler type roots that can go out even 2 to 3 times the width of the drip line. So I provided all that evidence, which, as far as I'm concerned, should be considered prima facie evidence that those roots are underneath the driveway and underneath the rock wall. I've done the exploratory excavation to demonstrate right past the rock wall and before the driveway, there's about a 2-inch root, and you know, the one that is there. And one of the points I made to staff early on is that not only is it likely that they're there, it's obvious that they must be there, or the trees would have blown over in a significant windstorm, because this rock wall is in one angle, it's about less than 7 feet from the tree's trunk. And then in the other direction, it's less than 6 feet from the tree trunk. And the trees are so tall, if they didn't have substantial roots going out, you know, way past that, they literally would blow over in any sort of significant wind. I find nothing in the code that says I absolutely have to have an arborist to provide this data. It's prima facie evidence. It's obvious that it must be there. So I reject the notion that it has got to be an arborist report. I only need to prove that it's likely to cause damage. Now, the other part is that I'm not saying that I believe that all these tree roots are coming up out of the ground and pushing under the bottom of the rock wall and driveway itself. They may very well be, but that's kind of beside the point. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. The fact is, when you have a massive tree like this with the root structure that you can see in those pictures as examples, you take that amount of mass and you have that go into the ground over time. As it grows, it is pushing the dirt up. And that creates a mounding condition all the way around the tree. The mound is taller at the tree and it tapers down as you get out to the edge of the roots. Again, prima facie evidence. It's just the nature of how trees grow and what happens. The amount of mounding and how it settles, or settles isn't the right word, but how they push against each other, and the rate of the mound can vary a little bit depending on soil types, but it's always there. And that mounding itself is what really causes the cracks in most cases, because concrete driveways and my retaining wall are not made to bow with a mounding ground. So I have some research papers that I've looked up, and they typically talk about a 20-foot span, and that is still only about a half an inch, no more than about 2/3 to 3/4 of an inch of mounding over a 20-foot span would be enough to cause a crack in a 4-inch thick piece of concrete. Now, in my case, the driveway itself is a little above 30 feet, but where the car sits is only about 10 to 11 feet, depending on which car is parked there. And those stress points are then causing that radius to be forced onto the concrete. Whereas, like I said, the driveways are made to be on flat, level ground, and then this weight of the car is not an issue. But once you mound it, the weight of the concrete itself over time is stressing it, as well as anything else that goes over the top of it. So, so that's, I guess, the main point I wanted to put there. Also in that, in the staff report on page 10, item 1, they acknowledge that the arborist has agreed that the likely cause of damage is from the tree. But then the staff goes back and provides the opposite conclusion, again, based on this notion that I somehow have to prove beyond the shadow of a doubt that the trees are causing the damage. Just simply not the case. The other thing I wanted to go over is the fire hazard. Again, city staff has buried my input about the fire risks down in, let me tell you exactly where it is there. I don't know why this thing is bouncing around. Sorry. When I have this all written out, and when I go up and down, it blows past what I want. Okay, so on page 5 of the staff's report, at the bottom of the page, it's almost hidden, is labeled as note 2. You'll find the only evidence I can find that the staff's mention of my submissions related to fire hazard from these Douglas fir trees. staff incorrectly states that they were intended to support the cracking and the other possible effects I have listed. I thought I was pretty clear when I submitted them that they were supporting evidence of yet another reason that would justify removal of the trees on its own merit, and did not refer to it merely being supporting documentation for the other issues. I even referred to the picture that I had submitted that showed the drip line of the trees marked in chalk along the driveway, and specifically noted that they should observe that the drip line extends over part of the garage. The drip line marking leading to and abruptly stopping at the front edge of the middle part of the garage was intended to demonstrate that overlap. In a statement that I gave them with those documents, I also specifically asked them to review them and that they should see that the tree separation from the house fails to meet the recommended distance away from the house in the fire documents that I was referring to. But it not only fails that, but it actually overhangs the house. I see no reason why damage from a burning tree that then sets the house on fire would not be a valid source of damage under the existing language in the code. Further, when its proximity so overtly violates the recommendations of state and national organizations that publish guidelines to help protect property from wildfires, the only reasonable conclusion to draw is that it adds a significant risk to fire, even though they would also give it a relatively low risk rating on a year-by-year basis. With the kind of fire season that we had this last summer, I submit that it is unreasonable to conclude that there is no risk. And with climate change causing more and more warming over time, there are many reasons to think that the fire risk will increase over the next several years. All of this leads me to the conclusion that it is a valid reason to remove the trees, even under the existing code language, because it is a likely cause of damage in the future. The only questions are, how far in the future,
1 minute,
how lucky will we continue to be to have the lightning strikes like we had this year not strike and set the fire in a tree or a group of trees that is on or upwind from our house. Further, I submit that the city manager, Martha Bennett, has already recognized that risk and validated it when she issued the declaration of state of emergency on September 11th of this year. And I have an Exhibit H, if you want to take a look at that. On the, let's see here. Yeah, Exhibit H on the last page of the Firewise plant list, and this is for Ashland, Oregon. And I don't know, do you want me to share my screen, or can you all have that in front of you?
Jeff, or Mr. Sherry, you're on mute.
Yeah, I
guess there's three seconds left on this time.
Oh, okay. Well, suffice it to say that there's several cities and municipalities and national organizations that have recognized that Douglas firs are a fire hazard that should not be planted within 30 feet of a house. Minimum separation in any event for burnable materials at least 5 feet away from the house. And I don't feel that the state and or city should be able to force me to keep a fire hazard that jeopardizes my house and family's lives.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant, commissioners? Okay, seeing none. Oh, Kirk? You there?
Yes. I was interested in your eye condition, and I was trying to make the connection of having to pass by Douglas firs in and out of your home Can you explain a little bit about that for me?
Sure. I have Douglas firs in every part of my yard. If I go out my front door, I have a Douglas fir that's within about 2 or 3 feet of the awning out the front of the house that I have to pass by to then get over to where the car is by these other Douglas firs. And then also in the front yard next between that Douglas fir and the street is another grouping of 2 or 3 Douglas firs over in that part of the yard. Neighbor has a big tree that's also hanging over. So if I park in the driveway, I actually have 2 driveways. If I park in the driveway, if I go out my front door and go to the left, I pass through all those Douglas firs and then even more droppings and things that come down on the car in that driveway, as well as being under Douglas firs that way. If I go out my front door and go to the other side, then I have the one there in the front and these 2 on the far side of the driveway. So what I do instead is I open my garage door and I go out through the garage so that I'm closer to the car and I only have, 12 feet or so to get to my car door and get in my car.
So is it you're allergic to Douglas firs, or is it?
I'm allergic to virtually every tree that they've tested me for except dogwood. I can't explain why not dogwood. Literally every other tree, when a 1 to 4 scale, it's a 3 or 4. Yeah.
Okay.
I've had that, of course, my whole life. But what's changed since 2015 is this escalating to scleritis.
So, I mean, there's a tree next to my home that blows pollen once a year, and I'm allergic to it. So, I'm just trying to figure out if your condition is.
No, it's more seasonal. The first time this happened was after we cut a Christmas tree down and brought it into the house. And so then since then we've had artificial trees. Otherwise it's been in like February to July kind of timeframes, which is consistent with when all the pollen is falling from these Douglas firs. And when you sit in our yard or standing in there on a clear day during those months, you can just see the pollen just coming down like a mist. Yeah, and then I not only have reaction to the pollen, but I also have reaction to the sap. So as I'm getting in the car and I'm grabbing the door handle with sap on it, now it's just everywhere I turn.
Right. And I was also interested in your constitutional argument.
My issue there is that why do we have government exist, right? And I included some excerpts out of that to make the point that the reason that we have laws and we have folks like yourselves and things in the planning commission when I was on it is to protect the public, because that's the main driver for why those are there. And when you have a law or ordinance in this case that winds up forcing someone to keep a tree that can cause not only health issues in my case, but fire risks. And that was part of what I didn't have time to get to, is that in the city of Oakland in 91, they had a fire that wiped out over 3,000 homes and killed 25 people. I had an aunt and uncle that lived in that area. Unfortunately, they sold it a couple of years, I think, so I remember, but a little while before that fire happened. And so I visiting them, I know that the trees that they had in that neighborhood was less than what we have here. And with climate change coming, I'm telling you, it's just a matter of time until we have a fire that sweeps through and takes out. I mean, literally, it's not unreasonable to think half of Lake Oswego could go up in smoke. Then you've got the kind of liability that the city would have, not to mention the possible death and hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion worth of damage to property across the city. And so when someone talks to me about, they like looking at the skyscape, well, yeah, so do I. But I think a skyscape that has, somewhat smaller, less fire hazard trees looks just as beautiful and is far safer than one that almost guarantees that we're going to burn down sooner or later. So,
okay, well, thanks, Mr. Herman. Appreciate it.
Anybody else have a question? Okay. Kat, are you still with us?
I am.
Do we have anybody that's going to testify?
The people that signed up are not online anymore, so I do not believe so.
Okay. So then, Evan, do we just move right into deliberations?
Yes, there's no rebuttal, so we move to deliberation.
Okay.
Give me a chance to rebut myself.
Not tonight. Gentlemen, what are you thinking? Randy?
Well, I just had a question of staff. What are we to make of the applicant's statements about his eye health issues? What criteria would we apply to that, or is it appropriate for us to take that into account on the basis of this application?
Jessica, one of the Jessicas, you want me to opine? Or?
Yeah. Well, it's a tough situation. I mean, obviously we sympathize with health conditions, and we have had other folks who have made such an argument. But we're looking for the criterion 1, which states that the removal is either for landscaping purposes or for development. And landscaping is that it's either outgrown its landscaping area, causing damage to a permanent viable existing structure, or as part of a landscaping plan. So unless you can find that a medical condition falls into one of those reasons, unfortunately, it doesn't really address that in the criteria.
Okay.
Thank you.
For the record, I'd like to add that I agree with them.
I'm sorry you can't comment at this point. Please mute your mic if you wouldn't mind. Any other questions, commissioners? Any more other thoughts?
We bring up the picture of that front yard again. Jessica, you able to do it?
Which one, Craig?
So I guess, I don't know if there was a closer up, but that's it right there. There's the wall and the driveway. And there's nothing that shows the trees that we could see if the trees are, how far they go out. Okay. Yeah, I have a similar driveway. I don't have any trees. I've got a crack straight across my driveway. It's probably settlement. This could be trees. I've been dying to get a new driveway, but yeah, I'm imagining that driveway is probably like mine, 50, 60 years old. But yeah, it could be the trees. Okay, that's it.
Mark, you look like you want to say something.
I have a couple of comments for us in our deliberations. If we go back to that photograph, actually, Jessica, if you go back to that driveway photograph, what struck me and has always struck me about the image of the crack is that it's very transverse and very straight. And it appears that it's a V with the apex down. It doesn't look to me like a root bursting up, causing the crack. I'm not anything other than an observer. It just seems to me that if a root were to do that you would see bulging up rather than depression, especially as you see it on the right side of that picture. That just strikes me as looking like a depression injury to that driveway. With respect to the fire hazard, I didn't find that to be a particularly persuasive argument, given that we weren't making a decision to take every tree down on the property, only the 2 trees. And lastly, I don't know what we should do I've heard a lot of discussion about the gentleman's eye condition. It seems to me that they are both true, but from the record, I'm not able to make up in my mind a decision as to whether they are related to each other. True, possibly related. There's no sort of definitive proof to it. Those are just my observations. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Well, the driveway certainly could be from the root, just from roots. I mean, not just because of the uplift of the root, but a root can also be a pathway for water. Around it, it can create void spaces as it grows, and there's lots of little factors that could wash out all the fines and the gravel aggregate underneath the concrete that can lead to that kind of a tensile failure. Just not to get technical of it, but I mean, there's 100 different ways that you could have a failure in concrete, and just the differential of material underneath the driveway could cause it. Roots versus gravel.
Thank you.
Just that explanation. But what we're talking about is a condition that is ubiquitous amongst all the homes. I drove around the area after I observed those trees, and that condition is common, in that neighborhood. Not only is the condition common there, but a lot of other homes seem to have little retaining walls that they built that kind of identify the planting area for those trees. So, it's I think that everybody would embrace a certain maintenance responsibility that comes with living in that neighborhood. Having a house in the urban forest that typifies Lake Oswego. So I really can't differentiate his condition with anybody else's, and I don't want to. I wouldn't want to, create a exception here that would indicate, to be consistent, I'd probably end up approving tree removals everywhere if somebody were to use the same criteria. And I frankly don't think that the criteria that is listed in the code, that he's met that standard, and that's what the city has opined. So that's why I would move in favor of the city on this one.
Okay. Anybody else? Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll move. I don't have it in front of me, but I move to deny the application based on the fact that the applicant did not meet the code criteria for tree removal.
As stated in the staff report.
As stated in the staff report. Yeah, good.
There's a second?
Second.
Thank you. Kat, can you pull the commissioner?
Here.
Say that again. Is that me?
Here. Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yes.
Polson.
Yes.
Berardi.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Frankel.
Yes.
Stylen.
Yes.
Arthur.
Yes.
Mr. Boone, you are on mute.
Mute here, unmute.
There
This
you
is a tentative decision, written findings brought back to the commission on Monday, December 7 p.m.
Thank you. Next order of business is schedule review and management update. Jessica?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of items coming up on the schedule on December 7th. We do have 2 items for that evening. The first one is a hearing for multifamily building, it's a development review for a multifamily building across from the post office on 4th Street. And then the second application is has to do with a similar use interpretation for a Cruise Village site, Cruise Village commercial shopping center. Those are the only 2 items that we have scheduled as of right now. We did do a schedule check for the second meeting in December, but we may not need that. It doesn't look like any of the applications that we thought were going to go complete are going to be complete. There still is a chance, so we'll keep you posted. But at this point, it looks like we just have the 1 meeting in December so far.
Okay.
That's it.
Jessica, was that, so there is a multifamily application across from the post office that we're
Correct.
going to have to review?
Yes.
Wow. So, that's not nothing. That's finally.
Yes.
Something substantial, It's great.
Yeah, go ahead.
No,
I'm looking forward to it.
I was going to say something snarky, but I won't because I don't know who's listening. Anything else?
No, that's it for me.
Well, everyone that's still on, have a great Thanksgiving, and
You as well.
we are
You
adjourned.
too, Mr. Chair.
See you guys and gals.
Good night.
Yeah.
Happy
Thank
Thanksgiving.
you.
Yep. Happy Thanksgiving to all.